listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, December 16th, 2022. And I hate to start off with bad news, Andrew.
Uh-oh.
But HCav, Hanky Cavs, as I like to call him, Henry Cavill.
Oh, it's like, who are you talking about?
Hanky Cavs.
No one calls him that.
No one calls him that. Not to his face, at the very least. He apparently has made some interesting career decisions.
He had the shortest tenure as Superman.
Or retenure. I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah, so some news has come. So let's just say this. DC is it's like a Tasmanian devil whirlwind.
Well, actually, it's not DC. It's DC, WB, Discovery, HBO, right? Like, because honestly,
oh god,
we could go on. This company is
making choices.
I was gonna say fucking a horse, but yeah, making choices.
I haven't seen that video, but maybe you're right. I'm not sure. But what we're talking about here is the news of, actually, it has nothing to do with Henry Cavill. Actually, it has.
Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with Henry Cavill.
It has to do with James Gunn, because I don't think we've talked about it. But James Gunn and insert other person that is involved. It was him and some other person, and I feel bad for not knowing that person's name. Have kind of been given creative control of the DC cinematic universe. And people are really their interest is piqued because James Gunn has done some of the more popular stuff with DC recently, with the most recent Suicide Squad movie, with the Peacemaker show. And of course, he's made waves with Guardians of the Galaxy, with Marvel. And generally, he seems to be a creative, quirky, and interesting guy. People have been asking, this is not directly related to what we're talking about, but people are asking, like, so when does his plan go into effect? And recently he made a statement saying, and we'll try to put this tweet in, I don't know if I actually want to link to a tweet at this point, but we'll see how it goes. He said that his plan, we won't see any of his plans or the new DC universe plans until after the next Aquaman comes out. And I'm not sure what the date is on that. But news came out that he's actually writing a DC project, Andrew.
Yes.
And it has to do with Superman?
It does. In fact, it's basically a new Superman movie. Although it sounds like it's going to be something we've never seen before, an origin story.
What?
Or at least it'll feature a younger Superman.
It honestly kind of sounds like Smallville the movie, or like small post season, what was it, 7? What was the last, or 9? That show went on.
I assume it's actually post season 2 is what it sounds like. But we'll see.
Okay, sure.
But either way, it's a story of a younger Superman or Clark Kent or whatever. But
Superboy.
What they've already made clear is that it will be about a younger Superman. So it will not feature an actor who recently announced he's coming back to play Superman, which is Henry Cavill.
Oh, Hanky Cavs.
Yeah. So, and so Henry Cavill's he did an Insta where he said, like, hey, it's weird. They told me to make this announcement a month ago, and now I guess I'm done. I won't be playing the part anymore.
Well, I hope he at least got paid.
It's like so weird because it's, as an actor, right? They brought him back to play the part in the back end of Black Adam, right, in the post credits, which I get that was just something.
It's actually Hanky Cavs that shows up in that.
Yeah, it's my understanding.
Okay, because I know, what was he showed up?
It was not in Shazam.
Shazam,
yeah, right.
Okay,
he was not in Shazam. It was just a torso,
right? A body double.
But apparently, he actually was in Black Adam, and that was going to be the big thing of like, hey, everyone, I'm coming back. And that's what he said. Like, hey, I'm going to play this part again. And that came about the same time as him saying, I'm not going to do The Witcher anymore.
Right.
Which there's some other, like, it's not clear why he's not doing The Witcher. Like,
I heard creative differences because they're getting too far from the books.
Right.
And
I think a lot of people have kind of like intuited that based on some other comments. but
I bet they'd take him back.
now it's like, well, I left to go do this other thing that's bigger. Oh, I'm not doing that other thing that's bigger.
Right?
It's just such a weird, like, marketing campaign, I guess. I don't know.
Like, well, it's also interesting in contrast to Black Adam, which I guess did well, reasonably speaking, but
clearly not well enough.
Well, no, but also, I guess maybe, but I don't know, because we don't know James Gunn and company's plans, right? And,
of course.
And there's nothing that says that they won't include Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam in future plans.
Boy, that'd be a real sour take to feature Dwayne Johnson, but then be like, oh, Henry Cavill, no, we don't want you.
Well, it's also interesting because the co-publisher of DC, Jim Lee, Dwayne Johnson himself, were like, this is, and considering kind of, I guess it did well. I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but based on the response, based on whatever numbers they had, people involved with DC, people involved with the movie saying like, oh, Black Adam is kind of like creating a new groundwork for the DC universe going forward, right? And then it's weird with that, and then a month or two later saying like, yo, we're bringing these two dudes from Marvel to basically, and James Gunn did a movie and a show for DC to run the whole thing. And so I think that the more interesting thing is, yes, it's sad that Henry Cavill won't get a good movie, just like, Matt Smith never got a good season of Doctor Who. But he was a good doctor in a bad show. Henry Cavill is a good Superman in bad movies. And it sucks that we won't perhaps get a good Henry Cavill Superman movie. But I'm not going to say that that's even out of the realm of possibility, because yes,
well, anything can happen, right?
Exactly. It's so nascent and like bubbling up out of whatever primordial ooze that this whole new deal is creating, that like there's no firm answers yet.
I think for me, it just, given that he announced, very publicly and seemed excited about it, like, hey, I'm gonna play Superman again, and then like a month or two later is like, nope, I'm not. And like, he genuinely, it sounds, it was just an Instagram text post, but it does sound like he's not enthused about this new direction.
Sure.
Because like, I think to a certain extent, I just feel bad for the guy. I mean, I get he's probably wealthy beyond all. I mean, he can play Warhammer 40K, so he clearly makes enough money.
He can buy as many minifigs as he wants. Yeah.
Right. Like, he's clearly wealthy enough to play Warhammer.
He can get the good Games Workshop paints.
Right. But it's just that thing, like, as someone who like invests in the creative, effort, like for him to be like, I'm going to go do this thing, and then just to literally within a month being told, actually get bent,
Right. But then, you know what? Someone's going to come around and say, hey, you want to star in our Warhammer 40K movie? And he's going to be like, yes,
honestly, it makes you wonder why Games Workshop hasn't just shopped around and like,
honestly,
hey, we've
just
got
put
a guy
him in print ads in magazines. Like, you'll do fine. Yeah, and I'm not worried about Henry Cavill, aside from the fact that he seemed to really care about the character of Superman. The other thing is, like, he's not, I hate to say this, because he did care about the role, but like, he's so tied to the Snyderverse and that whole drama.
Oh, of course.
Like, he's not the only person that can play Superman.
There's he's not.
Of other actors
in fact,
out there.
Literally, other people did it while he was playing Superman.
Right? Superman and Lois. I mean, that guy, Tyler.
Hoechlin?
Yes.
Yeah. That
Superman is fantastic. Yeah. Honestly, bring him in the movies.
And honestly, Arrow brought back Brandon Routh. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, I actually, if nothing else, he was good at that.
Right. So what we're saying is that it's sad because Henry Cavill is great. Like, he's great. Like, he seems to be genuinely a good nerd. Mm-hmm. It sucks to see him leave a role against his will that he really cared about. Right. But like I said, I'm sure they'll take him back at The Witcher. I'm sure they have no problem shucking the lesser Hemsworth.
That's just the unfortunate thing. Like, oh, we already announced the lesser Hemsworth. Jesus. Oh, what an awful name for whatever his name is. Liam?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I'm just using classical language here. I'm quoting from Homer and the Odyssey and the Iliad. There's the greater Ajax and the lesser Ajax. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I feel like you're quoting from The Good Place at this point.
I'm okay with that too.
But anyway,
but we're not here to talk about that, even though it seems like we are. Because guess what, dear listeners? We have had weeks in Geek, and we're here to talk about them yet again.
Yes.
So if you don't mind starting, Andrew, what was your week in Geek this week?
Oh my gosh, mine is so far behind.
Oh, no.
It's literally, a year and a half behind. So I don't know if you know, as an audience, I'm a big fan of a TV show called Leverage.
What?
And I think I've actually mentioned, the new Leverage series, Leverage Redemption. And it is now I think, nearing the end of its second season. And
Wait,
I'm just...
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm actually genuinely surprised. Because, with a name like Leverage Redemption, it seems like, this is like a mini-series. This is kind of like we're bringing everybody back for one more adventure. But we're on season 2.
Well, and that's entirely believable. You could have watched the first season and thought that. Right.
Okay.
But no, there's a second season, which is, it's fine.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing because the original show was about criminals who basically are working against big corporations and stuff to help people that don't have any other choice, right?
So communists.
Yes. And that show aired from 2008 to 2013, I think.
I hate to say that sounds like a long time ago, but it is.
It is.
Holy crap.
Right. So the new show premiered in 2021, and
so they filmed during the pandemic, I'm guessing.
I believe so, at least in the later half.
Sure.
And it features the same characters minus one, Timothy Hutton, who his character Nathan Ford, who was the mastermind, he dies
off screen.
Off screen, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So he wouldn't. They couldn't assign a contract that he could agree to.
Because I think he had some
cancellation problems.
Some problems. Yeah. But so the show comes back and it focuses on a new character. Well, so there are two new characters they introduce, but I'm going to focus on what makes it Leverage Redemption. And the new character is an attorney played by Noah Wyle. And I think what makes the show really compelling for me and interesting is that the whole premise is that hey man, when you guys did this 10 years ago, when the thieves and when the criminals did this 10 years ago, they were helping people that didn't have any other choice. Right. They were helping expose that these big corporations and these rich people were doing crime. The crime is now legal. Right. The idea that, that attorneys, that the law has changed enough. And honestly, this was already true in the original series. Sure. But now it's that's often the whole premise is no, we see this thing that's this evil that's being done, but it is entirely legal. And so Noah Wile's character, his whole thing is he was basically that lawyer that did it, that made that built the corrupt, corporation with all the, whatever and the offshore accounts and stuff to make sure that the bad guys could do what they did with no, no consequence.
So he's got a sort of Sisyphus kind of problem here where he's atoning for his sins by pushing this boulder uphill, but it's because of what he did.
Well, so the first episode is basically the Leverage team meets him because he's trying to set fire to art in an art gallery.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
Well, and so there's a whole thing about.
Wait, is it modern art?
Well, so it's the pilot of the first episode is basically it's about a fictional family that owns basically an opioid company. And they've made billions of dollars getting people addicted to opioids. And now they're basically washing their reputation by funding art galleries. by putting their collection of art on display.
Don't blame the art.
Well, so it's the Sackler family, for anyone that doesn't know. Like, it's literally the first story of the show is about their, fantasy worlds parallel to an actual family that does this. And so it's just interesting, and that's how the show goes, right? Like, that generally everything we see it's all legal now, right? And I think almost every other episode features Noah O'Reilly's character saying, "Oh yeah, I used to set that up for people."
This is like when Magneto took over the role of headmaster of the X-Men. This is shifty, but also intriguing.
And so it's then doing the same thing of like, we're going to go help people, but more often than not, it involves this idea of like, well, but this is actually okay now legally. So if we want to fix it, we can no longer rely on exposing that they've broken the law, because they haven't, because they've been in power so long, they made the law work for them.
So this is just a show about all the characters collecting signatures?
Right. It's every episode is just them doing a protest and yeah. So no, it's still the same show, right? Like, it still shows them, all of them doing their thing. But it sits really different because it feels like it. I mean, the writers
it's recognizing even more.
They've recognized, that the world really has become this world where evil has become legal. Like the harm that these corporations inflict upon people has become so commonplace. It's so regular that it has now been made law. And that you no longer have these old solutions. Like, you can't rely on, we're going to fix it because we're going to expose that they're breaking the law. It's like, well, no, they didn't, right? They did the thing that is allowed, that they made legal.
Right.
I think that's so it's now, like I said, in its second season.
Okay.
And it's weird because it also acknowledges that the characters, like, they all have grown from the first season.
What's the network?
What's the network? It was originally called imdb.tv.
Oh boy, so ads, great.
So it's called now it's Freevee, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
So it does have advertisements.
Yeah.
Which is weird. To watch TV with ads.
You don't get like a weird nostalgia fix from that. You're like, oh, look at this ads. This is adorable.
Well, so when I watched the first season, I saw a whole lot of the same advertisements.
Yes.
I'm like, guys, you're not targeting me very well. The second season feels like it's still not great. Although, I would say that John Rogers, who was the creator of the original series, who's only a consulting producer for this show, and he's written a few episodes.
Oh,
he actually said that the whole thing with it is that this format is, at least for what he's seeing, is profitable, right? Like, it works.
Oh, interesting. I would also assume that this format and this provider gives them much more creative control.
Could be.
Than maybe going through a larger network or provider.
Well, and this is one of the challenges we see with TV, right? Like that, Netflix is funding a series, and you're like, but A, for how long? And B, we talk about the 3-year turnaround with Netflix, where they literally can most shows after 3 years. So it is a thing. I don't know if this is a format that'll work, but it seems to be. And I suffer through advertisements that are clearly targeting people that are not me. But that's fine.
You're a hero. Yeah.
I mean, I actually, what I did love, all respect to, was it Southern New Hampshire University, which I think when I watched the first season of Leverage Redemption, literally every commercial break was them doing this online learning thing.
That's
and I'm
amazing.
I'm like, man, bless your hearts, but no.
Well, hey, since you work for an academic institution, can you write it off this time watching the show?
No.
Oh, well, hey.
But I do like that they're back, they're doing it, and the one thing I will actually say is that while the original series there wasn't a lot of, they had character development, the characters, grew, but most of the focus was actually on Timothy Hutton's character of Nathan Ford and how he was a disillusioned alcoholic insurance adjuster who, whose son had died because his own employer wouldn't fund the medical care he needed.
So he kind of broke good. so to speak.
So they're actually...
Which sounds like what's the premise for the new guy, too.
The new one is they all kind of... Originally, it starts with them coming together for fun. They're like, hey, let's get back together. And they meet Noah Wiley's character, this attorney, and it becomes this idea of like, well, let's help him because he kind of broke, right? Like he was the evil lawyer who realized he was evil and did terrible things, right? Like I think the first episode they acknowledge he forced people, poor people into not, into basically accepting bad deals so the big company could save money, stuff like that. And that's how it opens. And of course, it then goes into their, the fun adventures of leverage, right? But I think they actually spend time with all the characters, taking time to say, like, what is this, what is this person doing? Where is their life going? Actually, I think even now, because again, the subtitle is Redemption, they even address the fact that like one of the characters in season 2 spends a lot of time saying, wait, how many people have I hurt in what I've done?
Is that the guy from Angel?
No. It's the grifter who's in the show.
Listen, you say the word grifter, and I go into a very different place. So.
Yeah, no, it's I forget. I forget the show.
British lady.
Yeah, the British lady.
Gotcha.
So she
was in a very good show called Coupling.
Coupling, that's it. The Stephen Moffat show, I believe.
Yes.
But she actually, she has a scene where in season 2 she meets one of her someone she burned when she was a young grifter, and she has this whole thing about that. We also see Christian Kane, who plays, who's the guy from Angel, him dealing with his own issues. Like they kind of bring all the characters out and let them have a time to address the fact that there are people they may have hurt. At the same time, acknowledging that, but what they're doing is also like they are helping people.
Right. So the question I have is because it was such a new format in terms of who was hosting the show, how it was presented to the public, because it was originally presented as like kind of more of a traditional serialized television, or not even serialized, it's more episodic. Yeah, but like it's more like not serialized. What's the word I'm looking for? Like I feel like it was kind of sold on more of like a syndicated basis. I'm not saying it was, but like it was more like, hey, this is kind of like, I felt like it was more like episodic, week to week kind of stuff. When they came back for Redemption, it was, I'm guessing, sold upon the premise of possibly being only a one and done kind of deal. So do you feel like it was a more focused, sort of almost serialized story? No, not at all. It was just,
there was, I mean, like I would say that there were a few, continuities throughout the first season,
but nothing out of character.
But nothing that the original series had not done.
Okay.
Because the original, like one of the things I always say that the original Leverage really did TV well, where like every season had some kind of like some narrative through the season that ended with a big like a final episode that felt like it wrapped it up, and it could continue if it needed to, i.e. it got renewed, or if it didn't, right. It would have been like, okay, that's where it ends. And they did that really well. I think season 1, 2 ended like on kind of not a cliffhanger, but a big thing that like would have been weird. But I think 3 and 4 both ended like, had it ended that way, you would have been like, okay, the show ended. Nothing left undone.
Kind of reminds me of like, I don't know how Long John Volume 5 ends. Available now at longjohnbook.com.
We're just going to assume that I cut off your mic there.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
But yeah, so I think this show seems to be doing the same thing of assume that every season is your last.
Right.
But also like the season has, things that kind of connect a little bit that feel like when you get to the end of the season, you feel like, oh, there was something there, but you didn't, no single episode, like, did you feel like I'm just watching, the third of 7?
Right. No sort of like climactic or like terminal cliffhanger kind of thing where it's like, oh, if we don't come back, everything is ruined. It leaves openings, but on its own can be considered an ending. That's cool. And what that does is it sets it up for like, yeah, we come back for season 2. it sets up, obviously, having that kind of mentality they can keep going for as long as
yes,
as this service will have them. Yeah,
cool. And they've also demonstrated that they can, if they need to, swap out cast. Because one of the things is that one of the main characters of the original series, the hacker, Alec Hardison, is played by an actor named Aldous Hodge. Speaking of bringing it around, Aldous Hodge, you may remember him from a movie called Black Adam.
Oh, I haven't seen that fine.
No, so he actually, the whole joke is that of all the actors in the show, he's one who's like career, like he was basically, that was like his first major part, being Leverage. And then after that, his career basically just like blew up. And including being cast as Hawkman in
shit!
Black Adam.
Okay, wow. I was about to look him up. I'm like, who is this guy? And then as the Hawkman. So no shirt, fancy mask.
So because he was so busy doing Hawkman when they filmed the first season, they basically brought in another character who in the show is his foster sister, who is, although she's introduced not as the hacker but as a builder. Like she's like, oh no, it's not all hacking now. We actually we basically 3D print shit. Okay. But she's the replacement hacker, right?
Compiling kernels.
So they've kind of set it up where they can have new characters show up, and actually, because the one of the things at the end of the original series, they established that they're going to go build leverage teams around the world, and they even acknowledge that that's a thing they've done.
That's cool.
And they even dropped the Korean show because there's a Korean leverage that came out 4 or 5 years ago, just for a season. Yeah.
Okay.
So they actually in one episode they make a joke about the team in Korea, right? So
that's awesome.
Because of that, they can just swap out as long as they get people that work.
But that's cool because they made it less about the team and more about the premise, right? Which actually speaks to the success of the boomer shows like NCIS and NCSI and stuff like that. Where I'm laughing because both you and I have watched those shows.
Yeah,
but let's be honest, who the actual audience is. If you can create a premise that allows expansion, I mean, honestly, Law and Order, let's not forget the fact that Law and Order SVU is the longest running Law and Order show, right? And it's a spinoff. Because the premise of the original was so solid. So this sounds actually like really smart writing and revision of a pre-existing show that is actually not really done a lot on post-network TV sort of streaming series, right? Where I feel like most things are much more attuned to being more serialized and more like story-based and I'm sure that's there. But it's also let's broaden things a bit. Let's actually have fun with it. And that's cool to see them kind of planting deeper roots than a lot of, streaming shows tend to do.
Well, I think because they have the background, basically.
Right.
So Leverage Redemption. That's my Week in Geek. I've been watching it. For me, it just really, the thing that sits with me so much though is the idea that one of the premises that's written into the show is that this isn't like the original because all the shit that was illegal back then is now legal. And the fact that one of their characters is a lawyer who just, again, Noah Wyle, great, but most of the time he's saying, "Oh, I used to do that," And I as someone who is a lawyer and feels bad about it sometimes. I'm teasing. I don't feel bad about it, but that is it does resonate because that is what it feels like often. Is that feels like that should be illegal. It's well, maybe it used to be, but hey, now it's not.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my Week in Geek, Dan. What about you?
I want to talk quickly about a TV show that it's not necessarily new, but it's been around for a couple seasons at this point. And it stars a character named Elora Danan. Now, you might be thinking I want to start talking about Willow, but I'm not. I'm going to talk about the FX show called Reservation Dogs. It's a FX show created by Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi about these kids living on a reservation in the Midwest. Now, it's interesting to say, like, Taika Waititi posts Thor: Love and Thunder, because I feel like all of a sudden after that movie released, he became a polarizing figure. Mm-hmm. Whereas up until the release of that film, he was kind of universally beloved. But it's a fantastic show, and it's in season. Oh goodness, I think 2 seasons are out. I don't think season 3 is out yet. But we're watching it kind of slowly because, especially by the end of season 1, each episode becomes like this delicious morsel of storytelling that deserves to be ruminated over and thought about and discussed. Which is, I mean, that's the biggest problem my wife and I have with watching TV, is that if it's a show that really gets us hooks into us, hour-long shows become 3-hour-long shows because we're always stopping and talking about it. And Reservation Dogs is a half-hour show on FX, and which means it's also available on Hulu. It's such a kind of muted and innocent premise. It's these 4 kids on this reservation where a friend of theirs had actually just recently passed away at the start of season 1. And so their whole goal in the first season is like, let's just make money so we can get out of here. Mm-hmm. What I love about it is that it's incredible. That's an incredibly earnest premise and an incredibly believable and grounded premise. But the show is incredibly funny, which is not surprising when you consider at least 50% of the creators of the show. And what I love about the show, and I guess it's also weird, we should talk about the elephant in the room. Taika Waititi is from New Zealand, mm-hmm. Right? Why is he making a show about Native Americans? Because he comes from a Maori background and is a native of his homeland, right? And has history and family there. And from what I understand, the Maori people have suffered offense and oppression in many of the same ways that Native Americans have here. And so he hooked up with the other creator of the show, who is a Native American, and they just worked this out. And it's a beautiful blend of comedy, absurdism, and really grounded drama that is, for me at the very least, kind of everything I want in a half-hour show. So I guess I should get the other elephant in the room out of the way. One of the characters' names is Elora Danan, because her parents loved Willow. And as soon as I heard that in episode 1, I'm like, this is my show. And and it's pretty great. In some ways better than the Willow show, but not in all ways. But it's actually a very, very good show because it revels in its absurdity, and it doesn't. There's an interesting timbre that can be cast over a show that revels in cultural nostalgia, mm-hmm. where all of a sudden things can be very sacred and very immutable. And this show has no, and I think this is, again, I don't know much about the other creator of the show, but Taika Waititi has no problem just throwing everything into the blender of absurdism. Right. And they have a lot of fun with not only, this sounds horrible to say, they have fun with not only sort of like the depressed state of Native American life in the United States of America, but also they have fun playing with Native American mysticism and ritual and religion. And part of what I've loved most about it is, well, one, the kids that they've cast are fantastic. But more than anything, like, there are a lot of Native American actors, and it's clearly, especially by season 2, like, once it got a lot of critical acclaim, and I'm sure even before that, like, a lot of these Native American actors we've known and have seen in a bunch of stuff, they can congregate on this one show, and, like, they're all in one place, and we can see them all celebrating their culture and also being really fucking funny, right? And like it's an absolute joy, despite the fact that they deal a lot with sadness and depression and oppression. But they do so in a very engaging and with a lot of levity, without being trivial or punching down. And because of that, my wife and I tend to watch maybe one episode or one or two episodes every week because we want to give some time between each one. But only because each episode, for only a half-hour show, has so much incredible content to it that we love just mulling over it and just and not figuring it out, but like just talking about it. And like each episode has such a strong sense of character and moves these characters forward, especially in season 2, because spoiler alert, some of the characters do head out of town by the end of season 1, and they have to deal with the consequences of those choices. And if anything, I think that the most kind of critical comment the show makes is not necessarily on any sort of native issue. It's more just like about the Midwest, and like some people seem to have a real hard time trying to get out of there. So send your complaint letters to Taika Waititi and FX, I guess. But it's a show that's been captivating, but also at the same time been really engaging and difficult at times, because they're dealing with real issues in that show, but always in an entertaining kind of way. But it's one of those shows where we took a while to get to it, and I felt kind of worried because a lot of hype had built up around that first season. But it is kind of one of those properties where, like I would say Into the Spider-Verse, like Andor, has lived up to the hype. And like this is as great. Oh, and Ted Lasso, I would say, has lived up to the hype that everyone else on the planet seems to have given it. It kind of hits a lot of buttons that I like in TV, despite not really being, a nerdy, geeky property in its own right. But it's so kind of keyed into what makes nerds nerdy, because these characters, the main characters, are nerds, dude. They are nerds as all get out, and they're also dealing with some real life stuff, and it's cool to kind of see that intersection realized on TV in a very empathetic and thoughtful way. And I heartily recommend it.
Well, it's good. I mean, I think when I saw the original adverts for it, I was like, oh, I want to watch that. And I kind of forgot.
Right. Yeah.
Which actually, I realized how much, like, TV now, like, I just miss stuff.
Right.
Like, oh, that show was out? So, well, it's good. I mean, I knew this one was out. I didn't realize they were in their second season.
Right. I think maybe they're in their third. I can't remember.
I mean, oof. Right. Like,
yeah. The short seasons are like 10 episodes.
But no, it's good.
Which is the best. Yeah.
I'll have to take a look. I'm excited.
Yeah. And you can consider it the actual sequel to Willow instead of the Disney Plus show.
Oh,
just kidding.
We'll talk about that later.
I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to stir the pot here so we get more viewers or listeners, depending on where you're listening to this. No. But it is pretty great to hear people say Elora every episode. And now I got that happening in 2 shows. Which is So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page of this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, such as Twitter and Instagram, which means you can find us at our respective handles. Which you can find Andrew on Twitter at...
Actually, you can't find me on Twitter, I don't think.
You cut the cord.
Well, I haven't deleted it, but I don't
don't post there.
It.
Oh, yeah. No, you can find Andrew Tooting at Mastodon, I guess, at...
profounddark@dice.camp.
Sure. And you can find me on Twitter at dbethel, where I just retweet people and self-promotion. You can also find us on Instagram, where Andrew also doesn't really post, at Profound Brick. You can find me and my work at dbethel comics.
I mean, social media is dead.
Andrew's just done with social media, what I'm hearing.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. There you'll find the show, which you may already be listening to on YouTube. If so, please like and subscribe, or as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4, both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod, the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 attribution license.
If you'd like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners to the magic of algorithms.
So I actually read this thing where someone talked about the fact that podcasts still say, you know, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from.
Right.
And it's this commentary that, like, despite everything else going to shit, the whole RSS for podcasts is still how podcasts circulate.
Google couldn't kill the RSS feed. They tried with Google Reader. But I mean, as everything else burns down, like, there's part of me that's like, thank God RSS survived. Because I was a huge fan of RSS stuff, man. And especially as a person that makes webcomics, I love RSS, and I would love to see the rise, the return, like a phoenix from the ashes, Andrew, of the RSS reader. But I think we still have a ways to go.
I mean, we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. Let me also just say this. Today is the last day to get your pre-order in of Long John Volume 5 for $20. You can get the book signed. You can get a copy of the ebook. You can get a 1.5-inch steel pin. You can get 2 mini prints of my art. You can get I want to say a coaster, but that comes with every order anyway. But anyway, you can get that for only $20. You can there's a 5-book bundle. You can get an artist's edition. Check it out at longjohnbook.com. I feel icky for self-promoting, but that's also my problem in general.
Yeah.
I should say after today, Volume 5 will be available on the store at longjohncomic.com, and you should check it out. It's a fun book. I like it. Well,
and I learned something.
What's that?
I learned about that part of California.
Yeah.
And the elevation.
Mm-hmm. There's some educational aspects of the new book. So
there's a map.
Oh, Jesus. Can I write off every sale I make?
No.
Damn it. I don't know how taxes work. So until you learn how taxes work, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Aspland.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
Oh, that's a long file. Well, the first 30 minutes. Good 30 minutes are the first 30 minutes are like us bullshitting about fucking pedagogy.
We'll hit and stop.
If you learn how taxes work,
contact us.
Contact the government, honestly. I don't even care if you did. Like, you could talk. It's your show too, Andrew.
We're making popcorn. I'm sorry.
And we are your 2 overeducated, codependent nerd hosts. Forgot to pluralize it. Was that your tummy?
No, that's some noise outside.
Okay.
But I appreciate you think that apparently I'm exploding.